You get to your station, the lift is broken, no app lists which stations have working equipment, a guessing game of where you go next. You maneuver your whole transit route to a station with a working lift. You called ahead for a ramp. When you get to the station, there is no staff member on the platform to bring you one. Finally, on the train to your desired destination, you arrive at the station that was supposed to be step-free. Massive gap between the train and the platform. No way of getting down. You think to yourself, what the heck am I doing here? Hi, my name is Alex Gabriel-Yingling, and this project is entitled Mind the Gap, Disability, and the Challenges of London's Transportation System. The phrase, mind the gap, has become synonymous with London itself. The expression is plastered throughout the city at stations, posters, and merchandise ranging from sweatshirts to shot glasses. Meant as a precautionary warning, mind the gap illustrates the casualness with which people accept ableism. Ableism is the discrimination against disabled people, and the casualness with which ableism is accepted is a global issue. While London commodifies such problems, as seen with their souvenir shops dedicated to the phrase, other companies like Amtrak in the United States are also guilty of these ableist attitudes. Mind the Gap highlights how the London transportation system is not built with disabled individuals in mind. The social model of disability created by Michael Oliver underscores such phenomena. The theory states that it is not an individual's impairments that disable them, but rather the inaccessible environment around them, which restricts certain groups from accessing parts of society. This framework will serve as a grounding theory for this project. This research argues that physical infrastructures, especially those tied to transportation, are a constant presence that influences an individual's sense of self, others, and society. Specifically, this project will focus on the impacts of physical infrastructure on the disabled users of the London transportation system and how those with disabilities nonetheless create their own space in an environment that does not often consider them. This research was conducted in London in the summer of 2024. An inclusive cycling charity based in the south of the city serves as the primary field site for this project. Inclusive cycling is adapted or non-standard cycles/events, which are accessible to people with disabilities. I attended lead ride events held by the charity, which consisted of weekly, pre-planned routes around parks in South London with a group of about 10 to 15 individuals, using a variety of inclusive cycles. During these events, I engaged in semi-structured interviews with lead ride staff and participants, as well as conducted my own participant observation. This included riding cycles with participants, attending cycling and other transportation events, and taking notes during my daily transportation journeys throughout London. Interviewees were prompted with the statement, "Describe your experience with the London transportation system." Previous work on accessible transportation looked at the physical barriers disabled individuals encountered during their transit journeys and put less emphasis on the socio-emotional impacts of such experiences. This project, as summarized by this interview question, aims to center the feelings and voices of those interviewed. Olivia was a middle-aged cyclist and a regular lead ride attendee. She first started riding with the Inclusive Cycling Charity at the start of the pandemic lockdown as she was searching for exercise for individuals who struggled with hypermobility. The charity was conveniently based 20 minutes down the road from where she lived. Though Olivia has ridden various cycles with the charity, during the lead rides, her preferred cycle was always an electronic assist tricycle with a seat, which is depicted in the photo. Discussing her relationship with cycling, Olivia stated, "When cycling, you get to see so many things. You get to be part of life, rather than being a disabled person who finds mobility so hard. Walking is so difficult for me. So yeah. And the social aspect of all of us. We're all friends, and it's really lovely. Yeah. It's a win on every level." Regarding her other transportation experiences, Olivia stated how trains were terrifying due to the large gap between the train and the platform, the conductor not being able to see her due to the length of the trains, and the unreliability of staff when booking assistance. This hesitancy regarding trains and other forms of public transportation was echoed by other lead ride participants overhearing our conversation. The physical structures related to buses and trains conjured an air of uncertainty and fear for Olivia as well as other cyclists, whereas the opportunity to cycle brought a sense of joy and comfort. Cycling resulted in a positive perception of self, and that Olivia was able to be out in nature and see things, as opposed to experiencing difficulties with her mobility. In addition to perceptions of self, this conversation illustrated how disabled users of the London transportation system push back against the active force of physical structures that exclude them by creating their own sense of space. For Olivia, the other cyclists participating in these lead rides were her friends. These cycling opportunities were not only a way to get out into nature and see things, but also to rework a new network, forming social connections with other disabled cyclists. The relationships Olivia and other participants had with infrastructures reinforce Cassandra Hartley's idea that material objects and physical structures impact social relationships. Additionally, Hartley stated that these infrastructures also show the moral responsibilities a community has to individuals. In London, the inaccessible infrastructure, a part of the transportation network, demonstrates how the city does not consider disabled users when designing these systems. Olivia utilized cycling, as well as the inclusive cycling charity, to mine these structural gaps established by the city she lives in. Though all participants shared feelings of frustration and fatigue regarding London's physical infrastructure, some individuals, such as Eleanor, were drawn to cycling due to the independence the activity granted them and their ability to create their own transportation network. Eleanor was an extremely active individual in the inclusive cycling charity, being both a volunteer and regular lead ride attendee, and was also heavily involved in accessibility policy throughout London. She discussed the frustrating barriers she was currently facing trying to obtain a driver's license, as well as the issues she encountered during train, bus, and airplane journeys. The current physical structures of London's transportation system excluded Eleanor from utilizing these spaces. Her perception of self was impacted by her feeling unwelcome utilizing the London transportation system, in addition to her perception of society, specifically in that the city did not consider her disability when constructing physical infrastructures and policies. Cycling alleviated some of these frustrations. Eleanor first started cycling on a tricycle a few years ago and immediately fell in love with it. Due to the financial costs of an inclusive cycle, Eleanor opted for a build-it-yourself option. She noted the lackluster quality and how quickly the cycle fell apart. However, Eleanor also recounted how much better cycling felt than walking during that 2-month period. After hearing about the inclusive cycling charity from a friend, Eleanor decided to come to London to volunteer. Eleanor also described the frustration she felt with always having to rely on other people when utilizing public transportation. She stated, "Because I feel that is a major barrier for me when I use public transport is that I'm constantly relying on someone else. I'm relying on someone else to give me an update. I'm relying on someone else. I'm relying on the bus driver to move the ramp down. I'm constantly relying on other people, and it's irritating." To her, an effective transportation system was one she could utilize on her own terms and time. While Transport for London has promised to make all of its stations accessible, retrofitting is a very slow and time-consuming process. At the moment, only 92 tube stations, approximately 1/3 of stations, 60 overground stations, and all Elizabeth Line stations are considered step-free. Eleanor is not waiting for an accessible transportation system to build itself. Rather, she utilizes cycling to subvert these inaccessible infrastructures entirely, creating a transportation system that considers and works for her right now. Both Olivia and Eleanor describe feelings of frustration and fatigue with the current state of the London transportation system. However, neither participant gave up utilizing transportation infrastructure entirely. On a base level, complete abandonment of these infrastructures is incredibly difficult due to their role as a facilitator for connection. On a deeper level, each of these individuals found creative ways to navigate the environment around them that was not designed for them. Such techniques illustrate the cycles of exclusion that have continually perpetuated ableist institutions. When London says, mind the gap, it is pushing the responsibilities of accessibility onto transportation users as opposed to the government retrofitting these inaccessible structures. This shifting of responsibility forces disabled users to innovate and find creative solutions to navigate this inaccessible built environment. It is an important distinction that Olivia, Eleanor, and other disabled users do not innovate because they want to, but because they are forced to. The government and other institutions rely on disabled transit users to create their own makeshift forms of accessibility. Despite this non-ideal solution, these organizations continue to make inaccessible infrastructure before, once again, telling users to mind these gaps, starting the cycle all over again. Let's go back to the broken lift situation that started this video. Now imagine the frustration and fatigue if that were you facing those constant setbacks when you simply just wanted to run an errand. It is not that hard to imagine. Disability is a unique identity in that anyone can inhabit it at any point in time, and with aging population demographics, we are all likely to be disabled at some point in our lives. By centering disabled voices and narratives on inclusivity from the outset of infrastructure design, conversations shift from merely minding gaps to creating environments in which they never existed to begin with.